Casting your own metal moulding box sides, Part 1, Design Considerations and Pattern Production. This video is about making moulding boxes. Now, it's not a look at me, this is how I did it. It's more a video aimed at showing those of you who seriously want to make your own boxes how you can do it. And we've based a lot of our design criteria on that. First of all, most important in the design was that we've come up with something that's easy to make, that requires an absolute minimum of tools, and everywhere through the whole process that's what we've looked at. The actual design itself is based in large part on this box here, which I made, I don't know, 40 odd years ago, I think in the mid-1970s. As I detailed in the last video on my journey through moulding boxes, this design had some problems, but the basic idea of it with the 45 corners was quite good because it gives it a certain flexibility that we'll see as time goes on. Following these, I made this box, which was an improvement with regard to the pins, but it didn't have the 45 corners. But I must have used each of these boxes, and I have 10 this size, maybe about 1,000 times. I can't be sure exactly, but an awful lot. I followed that with this one. Now this one, we've got the design a lot better. The pins are now in the middle with respect to the up and down, as well as obviously the middle that way. And I have also continued to use the pin hole and slot arrangement, and this gives us a lot of flexibility in some ways. For example, I can take another box which is pinned the other way, and now I've got a 3-high box. And in fact, if I really wanted to, I can put another box up here and make it 4-high. Now, I have used 3-high quite a bit. I haven't used 4-high much, but I have used 3. And even this little fella here, that too, with luck, goes to a 3-high, and I've done a lot of work with 3 of those, I can tell you, an awful lot. There's a couple of other things we've done to improve the design over these few originals, and let's, for a start, have a look at this one. These, as I say, have been used an awful lot, but even so, the pin ears, as I'll call them for want of a better term, on this box proved to be a bit weak. There wasn't really much material around the hole, and in the case of the slots, this broke away on a few boxes. So in the new design, we've widened this ear a bit to give it a little bit more strength around the hole. Now, also, if you look at this older box, you can see that it has flanges on the outside. And while this looks like it might be a good idea, it really isn't, and we've abandoned those too. And the reason we've abandoned them is that, first of all, they're not necessary for strength. This box, and I've used these, well, I don't know how many times, 500, 1,000 times, I don't know each box. It's very thin through here, it's only about 3mm, but even so, it has not broken in, as I say, an awful lot of uses. And even the bigger box, which is the same construction, and therefore you'd expect this to go even easier because there's a lot more weight and sand, it too has survived quite well. Even so, I felt this was a bit frail through here. I would like it a bit better, so the new design is actually 5mm thick through there instead of just the 3.5, I think it actually is. But there's another reason too that we've eliminated the flange, and that is because under some circumstances it's actually a bit of a pain. If you've got a box like this, it's a 3-high box, and the work I did in these was very high, and I'd have to lift the box up a long way, well past where the pins would guide it, take it away, remove the pattern, load the core piece, and then I'd have to put the box back on over the core piece, and it was quite awkward. What I did, I just got some heavy weights and slipped them like this against the side of the box. so that now when I lift it, even when I run out of pin, I can just keep the box against those heavy weights. Lift it right up and out of the way, remove pattern, put core in, and then just bring the box back, nudge it up to the weights, and then slowly lower it down. And the weights, they're not as perfect a guide as the pins, but they get you in the right place most of the time, and that works quite well. But you can't do this, of course, if you have a flange on the outside. So we've abandoned that flange, and that makes the box all in all rather a lot simpler anyway, and we figure that's a good thing. Here then is our simple and rather elegant moulding box side design. It's shown here with the pin ears alternating between hole and slot arrangement. 2 out of every 4 boxes will have holes that are reasonably tight and accept the pins locked in place with little grub screws. One of the other sides will have holes that are loose and the pin can slip in with ease, and the other remaining side will have the slots. Here is an assembly of 8 box sides to make a complete flask. Note that any opposite pair of box sides can be taken out and replaced with either shorter or longer ones. The use of the hole and slot arrangement for the pins gives you that little bit of dimensional come and go that will enable you to do this. Note also that we have a sand retention lug on the top and bottom of each box side. This gives us the maximum grip on the sand while using the minimum of available box space up. I find this sort of arrangement for holding the sand is a good investment, as it will save you from drops. We decided that we would make the pattern a 3D print because we figured that basically everyone's got access to a 3D printer these days. And here are the first 3 of the patterns. That's as printed, very simple, prints very easily, and there's a short little video I'll put into this that shows one of these being printed, and it shows the basic design consideration. It's printed on edge. That's the bottom edge there, and it sits at a slight angle so that you get draft on this bottom face on this one. Now initially, when we first tried to make these, we tried to print them this way and rely on the fact that we told the printer to stack this area up here at 45 degrees. It didn't work. Unfortunately, when you print the ends, they seem to sag down, and we didn't get a 45 degree angle. In fact, I've actually put these under a milling machine and filled them up with a bit of bog here and then milled them to produce an exact 45 angle. But that defies one of our design criteria, that it's got to be easy to do. We didn't want to have to restrict this to people with a milling machine. Not everyone's got one of those. So we've abandoned this method, and my good friend Nigel from Small CNC Lathes, who's done all this printing, he came up with this technique. And this way we can guarantee that the angle here is in fact 45 degrees. It's not relied on the plastic sagging or holding up. The little bit here, of course, is printed separately, and it simply gets pinned into place via the holes and glued. Now, we get rid of these because they're no longer relevant. This is the way that we first tried to print our pattern for the moulding box side. It didn't work very well because the ends sagged and they didn't come out at a nice 45 degree angle. This meant that when you tried to put the box together, it didn't come out as a square box, so we had to abandon this method. This is our next iteration of the moulding box side. As you can see, it's much simpler. It's printed in only 2 pieces rather than 5 that the earlier one was. This method of printing also solves the problem of the 45 degree angles not quite coming out correctly. My clever friend Nigel from Small CNC Lathes came up with this method of making this part, and as you can see, we've eliminated things like the unnecessary outside ridges. And we've also developed some taper on the pattern, some draft, that allows it to be moulded quite easily. Here are a couple of time-lapse sequences of the parts being printed. These printers are owned by Nigel from Small CNC Lathes. It's actually a CR10 Mini, which I understand is a reasonably common and fairly ordinary sort of printer, so just about anything should be able to do this. Nigel is responsible for all the 3D printing and CAD work that you've seen in this video, and you should devote some time to checking out his channel, Small CNC Lathes. He does a lot of very clever work with these little lathes, and he discusses tooling rather a lot. Now, his tooling recommendations, while he intends them for CNC lathes, they also suit normal lathes, and in fact I've followed most of his recommendations myself, and I heartily suggest that you check his work out. It's well worth seeing. I mean, to see the man turn a sphere with only a parting tool, or cut a thread at 3000 RPM, wow! As the result of all our 3D printing, we now have 3 of the 4 different sizes of patterns. 150mm or 6-inch, 200mm or close enough to 8-inch, and this one yet to be glued together, 250mm or 10-inch. The 4th size that we haven't printed is in fact a 300mm or close enough to 12-inch. Now, I have actually already cast one, and I'll show you that in a minute, virtually off this pattern here, which is a spare pattern that didn't quite work right. But I used it straight off the printer. All I did was smooth this area up in here, and that's quite important that you do that. And I think I just checked that there weren't any real rough dags on the ends here or on the ends of these, but that's all I did. I didn't sand it anywhere else. I haven't painted it. And because of the way we're printing it and the way it comes off the printer, you can actually mould that direct. If you wish to do that, go right ahead. I like to make them a little bit better, and this one I've sanded a couple of coats of primer surfacer. I'll put a bit more black on it yet. This one I've also sanded. I'll paint it up like that. But this one, when I do this, a video or two from now, I will just take the brim off around here, check for any little bit of roughness on those points, and then I will mould those as is, just to prove the point that it can be done, and if you wish to do that, you can. Now, this is the one we've already done, and it was a very quick rough trial, and I will show that actually in the next video. It'll only be a short little video, and we did have some problems with it. We've had a breakaway here and a little bit there where the divots are for the drills for the bolts, but other than that it came out quite well, and that's straight off the printer, that pattern, so we're reasonably happy with that. But as a result of that, we've now modified the STL files to put a radius around these bolt hole divots, which we hope will avoid this problem of breaking out. Now, okay, what tools are you going to need to do this job? Well, the first thing, you're going to need one of these, an angle grinder, or you could probably use the edge of a grindstone on a bench grinder. I like to use a nice thin wheel, and you're going to need that to cut these. This is the hardened pins that you'll use to make the pins that hold the boxes, the dowels for the boxes. I will leave links in the description as to where you buy those, but they were just purchased off eBay. You'll need one of those. Everyone's got one of those, I hope. A couple of those. And I went and purchased 2 reamers. That's an adjustable reamer and a fixed one. This one covers 12mm and this is fixed at 12. You can get away with just one if it's the adjustable, but I'd get one of the 12 as well, one of the fixed 12 as well, because you're going to need to do holes. For example, if I could show you on this box, These holes here want to be fairly tight on 12mm, and for that I'll use that one, the fixed 12mm reamer, and then they will still actually slide in, and we will lock them in using little grub screws put in with this. This is a 3mm tap. You can use an 1/8 Whitworth or whatever national course size is the same as that. You can get these off eBay too, and in fact I would buy more than one. You're liable to break one. And we will just simply drill and tap in there and put a couple of little grub screws in. So you will actually be able to remove the pins, as sometimes that might be necessary. You'll need a tap holder like this to hold the tap, obviously enough. What else? That's damn near it, but the most important thing you will need is a drill press, because the holes we have to put through here have to be exactly parallel with that face. Let me take this box back again, bring this back. Exactly parallel with that face and exactly square with this face. If you're more than a little bit out, you'll be in big trouble. So we do need to have a drill press that you can drill square with, and you've got no chance, I might add, of drilling it by hand with a hand drill. You'll be all over the place. The only thing you really need to do with these patterns, you must do, is clean this face up here. And the way I did that is I had a sheet of abrasive paper down on a flat surface, and very carefully, just like that, being very careful not to tilt this or tilt that. Keep checking to make certain that it's flat, because that 45 angle is most necessary. If you don't get that right, when you put the box together, this won't be square, and you need that square. Now, how many should you make? What should you make? Well, the choice really is yours. But this is the box that I have used most. Now, it's approximately an 8 by 10. So what I would do is I would use this one in combination with this one, which will give you a box a little bit bigger than this one I've used, which wouldn't be a bad thing. And I would make 4 of those and 4 of those, and that will give you one complete flask of 8 box size. That's where I would start. And if you like the idea after that, well, you go ahead and make more. You could make more of the same. You can make 4 of those and another 4 of those, and make a smaller box, a bit more like this one that I've also used a lot. This is it's a little bit bigger again, I think, this box. A little bit bigger, not much. You can also combine 4 of those with 4 of these to make a long, thin box. You can get the next pattern here, the 300mm 12-inch one, and make 4 of those and 4 of the long one. You can combine them in any way, shape or form that you like, but as I say, start first with 4 each of those, see how you go, see how you like it, and then continue on if you so desire. Now, we will leave links in the description for where you can get these, where you can get these and these, where you can get the tap. One other little thing. When you're casting, cast yourself a block like this. The reason is so that you've got something to experiment with drilling and reaming the holes, because it's not as easy a procedure as you might wish, and it doesn't hurt to have a bit of practice to work out what sort of size hole you've got to drill and how you're going to ream it. You may do it a little differently from me and wind up having to drill different size holes, but we'll cover that when we actually get round to doing the hole drilling anyway. But just at the same time as you're casting these, knock yourself up something like that, just so you've got something to play around with and try.